Hello again, my friends. Welcome. This is the last in the current Sage CRM learning series. Thank you for coming along. We're going to look today in a, more philosophical way about some of the extended features. Now, by philosophical, actually what I mean is fewer screenshots, more talk about what is possible. And I want to give you the impression, as we often do, to show you the breadth and the usage of the features within Sage CRM. And it doesn't matter whether you're new or whether you're looking to brush up on your skills. These sessions have been all about understanding the value you can bring to your organization. Whether you're a Sage 50, Sage 100, Sage 300, or something else, these sessions are all about explaining how to set up and use the product inside any business. So today, and this is a relatively short session today, we're talking about Under the Hood, Part 2, looking at the extended features. And by that, I mean taking advantage of the application programming interfaces, the object models in the product, and so on. So this is really for people who want to stretch and bend and shape the product in different ways through different environments, third-party systems, your own implementations or integrations, if you like, and more. It's really the point, and I know I make this quite often, the product is fantastically flexible and good to go out of the box and very fast and quick to configure inside the interface. But this session in particular is to say, well, when you'd like to do something more, there are other things and other ways you can interact with the Sage CRM system, its data, its objects, and so on. That's what we're all about. So let's make a start. Let me tell you about the different application programming interfaces, or APIs, within the Sage CRM product. And I'll go through them one by one, and I'll also summarize them all together and compare and contrast different methods and why you might use one or over another towards the end. So, the application has been designed from the very beginning to be open to getting data in, getting data out, taking advantage of the object models or the way things are done by the product through external interfaces. There is a choice of development options and a choice of these application programming interfaces. It's designed to make it easy to extend. Let's have a look at these different models, and then, as I say, we'll explore which is better for doing different things in different ways. There's a concept where we just really work with different metadata changes. For example, there's a technique in the product called RunBlock. RunBlock allows you access to different defined structures inside the metadata, and you can invoke a RunBlock from a tab or from a button group without the need to generate any explicit or create any explicit code. So if you remember over this series, we've looked at the tabs. There's a company record or context where there are tabs like communication or summary or person. So RunBlock would give you the ability to create a whole new tab called whatever, doesn't matter, where you might then leverage or use some of the metadata, the built-in features, a screen, a list, that sort of thing, on this new tab. And that's what RunBlock's all about. It's quick, it's simple, it's limited in functionality, but it might be just the thing you need to create a simple extra tab. So that's the first one. We also have this concept of what we call SData. SData is a Sage term of data exchange. It's less used these days than it was several years ago, but it's still there, and some of the accounting products still use this. It allows for the retrieval and extraction of data very simply from within Sage CRM out to other Sage applications, 100, 350, etc. Any of those that use SData as a mechanism for data exchange. So that's available. The product also has Soap-based Web Services. That's SOAP-based Web Services. This interface allows for the complete create, read, update, delete interactions with all of the data, and it also includes custom entities and linked entities that have been published through the Sage CRM API. So a simple example of that is you could invoke a method via this interface to update a particular company's phone number, or update a person, or delete them, or whatever. So that's what that's all about. And so if you think about that in the real life, it could be that you have another system that wants to populate a field. Say it's a Hoover's or a Dun & Bradstreet, for example, that you get a piece of data from somewhere, perhaps, and you manage to then take that data and invoke a change against a record. It's probably not a great example, but that will do for the subject of today. As ever, you can read a lot more about really how this works and how best to deploy it in the documentation. And as ever, I will point you to that documentation at the end of this session. As part of offering these different sort of interfaces, it's really a strategy of choice for you, particularly if you're bending and shaping through a development environment to get access into and out of data in and out of the system. There's also a .NET API. This allows for screens and structures to be assembled inside a .NET assembly. What does that mean? Well, it's particularly useful for professional developers or people at our partners, our resellers, for example, who may have created some clever piece of functionality that does something different, additional inside Sage CRM. So it's their intellectual property that does that, and they can create or use the object model of the product, but then putting it inside a .NET assembly means that clever intellectual property is protected from people accidentally stumbling over it and deleting it, and protected from anyone who wants to copy what that reseller has built and then do it themselves. So that's why .NET assembly may provide a good interface for you and anyone you deal with. The product also has a classic, what we call ASP COM API. The classic APIs, yes, often how we phrase it. Again, allowing developers and our reseller partners to extend Sage CRM. And we, out of CRM HQ, also offer a set of wizards and sample code templates that you'll find on the community that allow for very easy extension of the product as examples so that you can see how that works. So that's the COM classic API. Our data model is open and published. It's always been this way. So whereas some tools, applications have obscure and hard to understand table names, table 673-4, ours is very straightforward. The company table is called company. The person table is called person. There's a very extensive model, and that's a sort of a sample of a model. It's not necessarily the one you would use. But the idea is it's very simple using data discovery tools that are readily available, as well as our own published map about how all the tables sit, the fields within them, and how they relate to each other through link tables and, of course, the views on top of them that help extract and provide the information into the CRM application. You can find out much more about how this works at help.sagecrm.com, where you will find all the manuals you need, PDFs, help files, etc., on the integrations, the core itself, and how to perform extra work that I'm describing here. Here is a close-up view of that model, which I admit might look a bit confusing to you if you're not used to it, but really straightforward. And the point I'm making here is the table names are as you'd expect. So in the top left there, that's the table name called person. And if you look at the fields inside that, you'll see, if you move down through the first three, which are usual ID rows or ID columns, I should say, you will see things like salutation, first name, last name, middle name, which if you know CRM at all well, you'll know that those are just fields that appear on a person screen, and so on and so forth for all the other tables. So it's very easy to really drive home the point to understand what the columns are, what the field names are, the columns, where they exist, and equally, if you do use other tools, BI tools, Excel tools, even if you wish, it's pretty straightforward to figure out what you need and how to get it out. And that's the corresponding view, of course, inside admin, where you can see company tables, case table, and person table there. So it's very easy to be able to construct structures like views, for example, and we've talked about views before. This is in the system admin area, and I've gone into the customization area for the person table, and I can look at the views there. And as we touched on, I think, the last session, certainly not at the last, the previous to that, where this idea of how to create your own views based on the ones that are already in there to make sense or to change or to update or include other tables in a view. And you'll need any of those And you'll need to understand those to be able to leverage the extension techniques we're talking about today. So, coming up next, a very, very interesting slide, lots of colors, lots to look at. The image here we're looking at is summarizing the importance of that metadata I referenced early. And the importance of metadata is important because it references and is important to any of the API approaches and decisions that you use. The foundations of the interfaces are actually laid within these metatables. So the metatables I'm talking about are the blue boxes at the top: custom edits, custom screens, custom tables, etc. It's the metadata tables that define the structures we would like to see, and they're used by any of the screens constructed inside Sage CRM. So I think I pointed this out in the previous session. One of the key tenets, the founding tenets of the product, was we would create the core system, Sage CRM, and all its clever intellectual property, and wrap that up inside what is called the DLL there in the middle left on the gray screen, DLL, Sage CRM DLL. That's where our intellectual property resides. But when you deploy your system and you go ahead and you create a new screen or put a new field on an existing screen or a new report and give it a new name, etc. All those sorts of things are stored in those blue metadata tables: custom edits, custom screens, custom tables, etc. Why does that matter? Well, because if you then upgrade, and we'd always encourage you to upgrade to get the latest features and remove any bugs that have been found, the idea is we don't want to mess up your installation. Just because we produce new intellectual property, we shouldn't have you have to recreate all your screens and fields. That would be madness, right? So that's why custom tables like the blue ones you see at the top are so important. That's also why it's very important that the APIs reference these tables as well. Towards the bottom right of the screen, you'll see references to the web browser and either referencing other system web pages or ASP-driven pages or .NET pages. These references in the bottom right are ultimately extracting the definitions of the screens partly from objects which tell it how to draw the screen, so the stuff from the custom tables, etc. But importantly, they're deriving the properties and the structure of the screens and the list from what you've described them to be. So to reinforce my point, it is our core code, our intellectual property, how it renders, for example, a screen to you, that works in conjunction with the metadata, the blue tables at the top, to generate the output that is presented to the different structures, or, pointing to the bottom right of the screen, also allowing the APIs to operate in the same fashion as the core intellectual property would do. I hope that makes sense. I feel like that was a little more wordy than it should have been. Essentially, however you render a screen, I'll use that example, either through the core application or through the object models and the APIs, it uses the same approach. And that's important because it's consistent, it's integral, keeps integrity, and that sort of thing. By getting the metadata right, by using the metadata, it's very easy, I should say, through simple configuration or the API range I've just described, to do things differently, to change the way the system looks. So let me move on. Let me sort of talk about this idea. Oh yes, as well, mustn't forget down the bottom there, the bright green box. You can see idea. This metadata connectivity piece allows you to extend to third-party databases. Why that's particularly important, and indeed it's one of our most popular articles on the community, is what we consider to be quite a simple thing of connecting CRM to another external database through the good old but reliable ODBC type connects. It's a way of you connecting simply and easily, such that when you connect to another database, a third-party database, you can see the information of that database being rendered and named and set up inside Sage CRM, just like any other table is. And so from a user system design perspective, it's a simple way of surfacing data quickly and easily, let alone the whole programmatic pieces that I've talked about already. Right, let me summarize all these, and don't worry about potentially all the detail and reading it all in a hurry here because I'm going to step through these one by one, but also you can read more about the methods online. My colleague Jeff has done a great job of describing what to use and when and why. I'm simply summarizing some of his thinking here. What we see in front of us right now is the different interface extension options. These are the columns, and providing a survey of the different possibilities when using each of these. The point I'm making is choose the right tool for the right job. So if I step through these one by one, if you want something that works both with system entities, company, person, opportunity, and custom entities, ones you've created, project as an example, then any of the methods to extract, render will work for you. Moving on, not all the methods shown here can generate a UI. And if you think about that, particularly where it says no for say web services, that isn't how web services work, right? They just extract, push and pull data. They don't generate any response to a screen. You need something else for that, right? Similarly, flip it the other way around, if you like, can you create an interface without referencing the metadata? So the RunBlock example I used before, this idea of having a new tab called something and including screens and lists in there, well, it needs metadata to do that, right? Whereas in the, the .NET approach, where you're creating pages and then compiling them away, you can create and call and design new interfaces, new screens, new ways of rendering the information from the system without referencing metadata if you want. The IDE, this is the interactive development environment, and the debugging available within that. It's really much more dependent on third-party tools, so hence the different ways tend to get more sophisticated. You'll have IDEs with .NET and SData type things, whereas COM and API and RunBlock, no, not relevant in that order. Discoverability is an important thing. If you're extracting information and you want to know about how the system, Sage CRM, presents information, like what format is a field in, how long would it be, is it text, is it a number, etc., like that. Is that discoverable because you want to know in your third-party application how to deal with that information? Then yes, any of those methods will help you out on that. CRUD, this is the create, read, update, delete. If you're not familiar with that expression, you can see how there are different ones depending on the method. So essentially, if you want complete capability, any of the COM, SOAP, or .NET methods are the way to go. SData is really a read-only thing, so there's no capability to push back at that thing. Interacting with workflows is an important thing for some people when they develop things. So the ability to, from a third party, from a set of unique screens, calling a workflow. If you need to do that, then RunBlock is not an option. Neither is web services. Neither is the SData. So you're really then restricted to COM and .NET approaches. And sort of the same point, there's a component manager. I haven't specifically called out component manager in depth in this series, but a component manager is a way of recording customizations. You switch it on like a data recorder or a tape recorder, do your customizations, switch it off, and you have a component structure that you can pick up and take and deliver on another system, a test system, that sort of thing. And so you have different options there depending on what you're doing. And finally, and I'll expose this, I think, a bit more, this idea of web self-service. So we have this concept, which I think I have touched on in a previous session, about how you can expose and interact with data from CRM on a third-party side. And in particular, we have a web self-service API, a distinct API, that lets you take data, pop it up on your corporate website with appropriate security, naturally, to then have in your customers interact with you and have that information shot directly into CRM or pushed back out as well. So you can't use RunBlock in that environment because RunBlock depends on running inside Sage CRM, if you will. But you can use and should use something like COM or SData, presumably, but COM is typically how that happens. Let me focus just quickly on the web API because it's a useful one to focus on. I think it's a fantastic part of the product. It's not used by as many customers as I would have thought. I think it's one of those things that people think, yeah, we should probably get to that one day, and then just never get around to it. So in essence, and sort of as I summarized earlier, the self-service API is a separate API on its own that sits above these other ones I'm talking about, but allows interactions with a corporate website. And so typically people use this when you have a page that says something like on your website, contact me. You can have it such that the form on that page, name, address, what's your reason for contacting us, that sort of thing, squirt directly into CRM and perhaps rendered up as a lead and then allocated to someone to deal with. That's a really useful business process to get in action. Another way people do use it is in customer care. So when you have a customer, they are given a login capability managed in Sage CRM that says user ID, password, click, you're in. Or look, here are all the cases we're currently running with you. Here's a page to let you log your own case or anything else. So some customers of ours have taken it to the next level, which is, hey, you can have a look at your invoices. Hey, you can update your name and address, whatever makes sense for your business, really. So that's the self-service API. So that represents the options we have when working with Sage CRM and the different approaches to the interfaces, programmatic interfaces, the APIs that you have available to you. So I know for many of you, you'll probably go, it's not for me, and that's fine, because actually it's not for a lot of people, because the product is so rich and configurable out of the box, you need never go close to the APIs. But the point of this session is to let you know that it is there if you need it and to give you a feel for the way it might work and what you might choose depending on what you're trying to do. Where can you go for more information? Well, I could go on, but I won't. In fact, what I'm going to tell you now is where to find information. And the best jumping off point, as ever, is community.sagecrm.com. From that one URL, you will be able to get to anything you need about the product. There's much to learn through the help site. That's the help center at help.sagecrm.com, but you can start here at community.sagecrm.com, where you can access all the development guides, the admin guides, the knowledge base, all sorts of things like that. You've also got Sage U, where you can have videos or actually live training, as well as access out through there to the Sage CRM YouTube channel, support training channel for extra stuff. You've also got Sage City, where you can read the blogs that particularly Jeff, my colleague, posts, technical blogs and informational blogs about doing things in the product, as well as interacting with other Sage CRM users around the world. And of course, resources to the deeper level documentation for development interfaces that we've been talking about today. And just to give a quick example on some of the things that are on the community, by the way, in the e-learning area, so this is on community.sagecrm.com, and then inside e-learning, the right-hand top tab, there are e-learning options for all sorts of audiences. And in particular today, you probably spend time in the developer area, technical probably, but developer area. And inside technical, as an example, there's lots of training if you're a system admin, a trainer, an implementer, a developer. And such things include how to implement the product, some fundamentals on the user and security features, and then deeper down into the whole data of the product, the data administration, the customization, workflow implementation. And some of these may also, or extend to, I should say, other lessons. So things like using RunBlock, using the COM API, using the .NET API, which my colleague Jeff has put together, and you will find through community.sagecrm, but actually they're often available as well on the Sage CRM YouTube channel. Same stuff, just different locations, just so it's easy to find. So I told you it was a short one today, but in closing, remember, we're all about giving you, particularly talking about the APIs, not only the out-of-the-box integrations that we provide you, but different ways of accessing not only accounting systems, but all sorts of other systems, whatever they are. So wherever it makes sense for you to include or surface data from a third-party system, yours or someone else's, that helps enrich that 360-degree view of a customer record, we've got the tools to let you make that happen, to give you consistent views, to reduce the need to rekey information from other systems or recheck information, put it all in one place, integrate through the great richness that is the API environment of Sage CRM. My closing call, you've heard it before. Your accounting software helps you plan, account for, and study transactional information. But the call I make to you and the question I put to you time and time again is, what's your plan for the front office? What's your plan for customer relationship management? As ever, you can revisit the recordings. We've finished this series And there will be another series coming. So this is the second of the series. And we'll be launching another one, I probably think in a month or two, probably 2 months, reality, where we'll go in a different direction. But this is the end of this series. If you'd like to revisit of them, the URL at the bottom, any of them, I should say, the URL at the bottom is where you'll find all of the recordings. My colleague Ben has put them up there for us. So I hope that's been useful to you. I hope you've enjoyed the series. Thank you for attending. For those of you who stayed for the entire set, well done you. And I look forward to talking to you again some other time. But always remember, if you need any more information, it's all about and it's all on the community site, whether it's help, learning, asking questions, or deep diving into resources. It's all there for you on community.sagecrm.com. Thanks very much for attending yet again. I hope it's been useful to you. And this brings to the conclusion the second Sage CRM learning series from me. Goodbye for now.